That's pretty much true that all evil comes from within. And when we're not able to deal with it properly, we defile the people around us oftentimes. Jesus has been criticizing the Pharisees all week. Earlier in the week, he compared them to cups that were beautiful on the outside, but filthy on the inside. He compared them to whitewashed tombs that, again, look beautiful on the outside, but they're filled with rotting bones. Because it's very easy for us to put on a very good exterior, I mean, not everybody dresses as good as I do, but, it's very easy to put on a very beautiful exterior and then be very rotten on the inside in terms of the things that we think about other people or the things we say to other people or the judgments that we make against other people. I have a priest friend who told me once that at his church he has, the old-time confessionals, and he's hearing confessions, and he opens up the little window, and the lady says, "I have a beef with my pastor." And he says, "Okay." And she says, "You drive a brand new truck, you own your own house, this. And she says, "You do not live your vow of poverty, and I think it's terrible." Well, she didn't know that a diocesan priest does not take a vow of poverty. They receive salaries, they pay taxes, they can own whatever they want. If they win the $6 million lottery, they can keep it. Only religious priests take vows of poverty. So this lady who thinks she's so holy and righteous that she can go to her priest and criticize him for what she thinks he's doing wrong, didn't even do her research, which is pretty pathetic. And that's not the only time. I mean, I've had different people who are self-righteous that way come up and criticize me too. And that makes us, and I hope that makes us stop and think about the fact that sometimes we do the same thing to other people. That we think bad thoughts about them, we criticize them in our heads, and then it may spill out to where we're criticizing them in front of two other people, and we may even criticize them to their faces. When in fact, we most likely don't even know what we're talking about. We don't have the facts. We don't really know anything about their life. We don't know anything about what they suffered. We don't know anything why maybe their behavior is the way it is. But we will find fault with them, and we will find a reason to judge them and to criticize them. And when we do that, we're simply modern-day Pharisees. Modern-day Pharisaic Catholics. That's exactly what we are. Do you think that that's what Jesus wants us to be? If you've heard the gospel readings all week long, no, it's not what Jesus wants us to be. And like it's mentioned today in the readings by Jesus, that some of these people, they put the law of the faith ahead of the law of God. The law of the faith, which they're criticizing Jesus about today for his disciples breaking it, is the man-made law. The law of God is totally different. The law of God is summarized in love your God, love your neighbor, love yourself. Love does no harm to the neighbor. Love does no harm to the self. Love does no harm to anyone. But sometimes our man-made rules do a lot of harm. And yet we'll put more emphasis on those rules than we will on the law of God. And that's just simply wrong. Now, the opposite of this lady that I just described to you was my Aunt Rosie, who died in 2016 of pancreatic cancer. And she was the nicest, kindest, most loving woman I had ever met in my life. She was my aunt by marriage. I don't know where my uncle found her. It was like he married an angel, I never, ever, I was the altar boy at their wedding, and from that time on till 2016 when she died, I never heard her say a bad word about anybody. Not anybody. Sometimes my family would be sitting around at Christmas time and they're all jabbering and negative and criticizing, and she never joined into any of that. Never. And she was as helpful as she could be to everybody. She took everyone under her wing. That anyone who asked her for help, she was there for them. And her kindness was just extraordinary. I don't think I could ever possibly experience anybody like that again in my whole life. She was so incredible. The really sad thing was that as she was dying, she told my uncle she didn't think anybody would hardly show up for her funeral, because she didn't realize how extraordinary she was and how much she was like the person that Jesus calls us to be. Well, I had the funeral mass. I went home for the funeral mass. It was held at the parish I grew up in, and it's a very big church, and it was filled, absolutely filled with standing room only, because of all the people she had touched in her life. Wouldn't we all like to be that way? I mean, I'm not saying it's so important how many people show up at your funeral, but it'd be better that the church be packed and only have 3 people, right? I mean, I think sometimes that says a lot about this person. And I can't imagine not wanting to be more holy like that. So then what we're called to do is to be careful about the thoughts that we have in our heads. Because when we start having negative thoughts about other people, sooner or later they're going to start to just snowball, and they're going to get worse, and they're going to get worse, and then we're going to be tempted to say them to somebody. Sometimes this even happens down at our table at the rectory. I have 3 sisters here. They might be able to relate. I don't know. But sometimes it does. And sometimes it really bothers me, and I refuse to get into that. You know, I mean, I spend enough time criticizing myself. I don't need to be criticizing anybody else, you know, at the same time. And more I realize it's just not right. It's just not right to be finding fault and failure with other people, especially when most of the reason why we do it is to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. If I'm having a bad day and I don't feel especially good about myself, if I can say something negative about somebody else, it makes me feel a little superior. It makes me feel like I'm somehow a little bit better than that person. So I get this very false sense of boosting my self-esteem in a very ugly way. So I don't recommend that. So today, Jesus is calling us to be holier people by being kinder people, by being more sensitive people, by keeping stock of what's going on inside of us, because it's the evil that rumbles around inside of us that comes out into the world and spreads evil across the world. Even if it's just simply gossip, that's still evil being spread across the world. And don't you think that we have more than enough gossip in this world today? More than enough untruths in this world today? So how about we work for today and tomorrow and the rest of our lives of not adding anything to that? Because the change has to start somewhere, and it might as well start with us. So I'm willing to give it a try. How about you? Okay, that wasn't very good, people. How about you? Yes. That still wasn't good enough for me. How about you? Yes. Okay, I applaud that one.